Yeah, if you're playing golf or walking around in 35 degrees or 33 degrees, you're going to be losing around about 300, 400 mils an hour.
G'day everyone, and welcome to episode 84 of the Flight Training Australia podcast, the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host Trent Robinson. Thank you for joining me. Yet another amazing week, plenty going on, lots of instrument training. There's been some very strange weather up in the Darwin at the moment. It's almost feeling like a bit of wet season sort of weather, quite humid and cloudy at the moment. Really pushing from the weather moving into the central of Australia. Some massive rainfalls expected over the next few weeks. Very odd, but good for the IFR students flying in some actual cloud and having to deal with circling around a couple of the little cells. Nothing much, nothing major, but it's better than nothing. Tax time is fast approaching, so if you are looking for a tax deduction, can I put forward a suggestion and join me on Patreon? So Patreon is the tipping service of the Flight Training Australia podcast. It's a way that you can support me, supporting you, and just the cost involved with putting the podcast together, the equipment, and any money coming from Patreon will go directly into either the podcast or the production of YouTube videos, of which I did one just the other day. But patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. Go and have a look. The link's in the episode description. Everything is completely tax deductible, just like a magazine subscription. So you can do a $5, $15 or $35 a month contribution. You can modify it, change it anytime. You can also get a 15% discount for an annual subscription. So if you put that in before the end of the financial year, you will be able to put that in your tax deduction and help me out at the same time. After 3 months on the top tier, you also get an awesome Flight Training Australia coffee mug. So go check that out. I know those of you who have already received yours absolutely love it. And what better to kick back and listen to the latest episode with your own Flight Training Australia coffee mug. Alrighty. So go check that out, and I will love to have you on board. And of course, it gives you access to me outside of normal hours. And any questions, problems, any way I can help you out, please let me know. Other exciting news is I've just done my part 141 interview of CASA this morning. So hot off the press. This ink isn't even dry yet. So hopefully we'll have my own part 141 flying school certificate by the end of this week. And be able to head out on my own, doing everything from ab initio right through to commercial instrument and instructor training. And of course, all the other stuff, proficiency checks, and caravan training as well. So keep an eye out for some more updates on that as the weeks progress. All right, over to the episode today, and make sure you listen for at the end of the episode, once the interview is finished, for a fantastic special offer for all Flight Training Australia listeners. I'm joined today by a private pilot and doctor who specialises in hydration and is the developer of a product called Aqualyte. So get ready to quench your thirst for knowledge as we delve into the fascinating world of aviation hydration with Dr. Graham Bates. Graham, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Trent. Pleased to be here.
Look, it was great catching up with you in Perth, was it last month, and checking out your facility and talking about Aqualyte. And I was just thinking, hydration is such an important topic for pilots, especially whether it's long haul or flying up here and in WA in the summer. Everywhere gets hot, but just the heat. And I thought it was a really good idea if we sort of get together and have a bit of a chat. But before we do that, let's just talk a little bit about your aviation background. So what got you first interested in flying, and we'll work our way through from there.
Okay, well, I semi-retired, and I wanted something to challenge myself intellectually and physically. So I decided to go and do pilot training. And so off I went and did the pilot training. And I think you know a little bit about that, as you were my one-time reviewer. And I got into it initially. I did the opposite to what your wife did, which was, do I go and be a pilot or do I go and be a doctor? Well, I decided that I'd go into a medical career. And when I finished my medical career, or nearly finished it, I then went and became a pilot, just like your wife went and did a pilot's training and then became a doctor. So I did it in the reverse way.
When you did that, what was the sort of the general process? You just sort of chipped away bit by bit after work or weekends, or?
That's right. It was just very much a part-time program, and my very patient instructor allowed that to happen, and so it did take me a lot longer to achieve than what normally occurs, but yeah.
All right, and then eventually you have a home in New Zealand that you go back and forward to, and your son was working over there at the time, and you ended up finding a 182 G1000 182 that sort of caught your eye.
Correct. A friend of mine who's based in Wanaka got in touch with me and said a friend of mine's got a 182 for sale that he's retiring from flying, and so I went over and bought this very new. It had only done about 270 hours when I bought it, 182, and the hangar that it was sitting in. And I used to go back and forth from Queenstown to Wanaka, but I found that quite tough, actually, Trent. It was, by the time you've driven over I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's you go over a mountain range to get to Wanaka, and then you have to pre-flight the plane, go for a fly, and then put the plane away, and then drive back again to Queenstown. It's pretty much a full day. So I thought that it was becoming quite difficult to achieve all the time. I couldn't fly it a lot of the time. One, you've got weather constraints, but two, it's a very long day, and I found that only did short flights. So eventually I made the decision to bring the plane over here into Perth. So I flew the plane from Queenstown up to Kerikeri, Kerikeri to Norfolk Island to what's that other stop just before Sydney? Lord Howe Island.
Lord Howe Island, yeah.
And then from Lord Howe Island to Sydney, and then over to Perth. So it was about a week.
What a fantastic trip. How did you go about planning that?
I knew somebody that in Wanaka that had actually done the trip before, so he gave me a lot of very good advice as to what I'm going to require, like a satellite phone, a life raft, etc., and talked me through the processes of what's going to happen when I land in Norfolk, in terms of quarantine, in terms of where I can go, and I just don't get out of the aeroplane, wait for them to come and see me, rather than just get out of the aeroplane and start walking towards the
avoid getting arrested.
Before getting arrested, that's right, something like that. So yeah, I was pretty much prepared, and I had it all written down, and I had most of it pre-planned and written down, so it wasn't too bad.
And did you have VHF comms the whole way, or did you? How did you manage that? I guess you went VFR because you're not instrument rated.
Yeah, so I went VFR, and I used the satellite phone a couple of times when we were outside of radio range.
Amazing.
But that wasn't very long. And that was, it was not a long period of time being out of range.
And how was the timing of it? So did you have to wait a certain time of year for the weather to be favourable? I'd imagine it could be getting a bit hairy with so few options.
Yes, we did. We flew over in summertime, and we didn't have any trouble with the weather, apart from going into Sydney initially. It was a little bit hairy, and but got through that. Sydney talked us through that.
Yeah, crazy traveling across the Pacific and the Tasman, and then you're having trouble getting into Sydney out of the whole trip.
That's pretty much it. The rest of it was very good and very straightforward. Norfolk Island was very easy. Lord Howe Island was a bit of a challenge to land. There was about 4 windsocks there, and they're all saying different things. And there was no tower there. And there was a marine, a guy on it, the marine guy, and he said, "Oh, all of the windsocks are going to be telling you different things. Good luck."
Well, it's kind of wedged between those two sort of mountains, isn't it? So
I can
imagine.
Yeah, it is.
And did you need to take a fuel bladder or anything with you, or the standard tanks were enough?
No, just the tanks were enough. We refueled in Norfolk and refueled in Lord Howe, so that was it.
Yeah, okay, amazing. No, well, you've done something I haven't. So international flying, not to mention a water crossing like that. So it's a real credit to you. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. So flying such long distances, I guess that's kind of part of the topic of what we're talking about today, and being able to stay hydrated. So what is your background? You're a physiologist?
Yeah, pretty much. I was in academia, as you know, for 30 years, teaching at the university, 1 in Auckland and 2 here in Perth. And basically, I did my PhD, which you have to do if you're going to stay in academia, on human thermoregulation. And it was basically geared on what I found when I was running a marathon called the Comrades Marathon, which was based in South Africa. It runs from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. It's a 90-kilometre race. In fact, it was last weekend. It was run last weekend. And when I did it, there was 6,500 runners. Now they've got something like about 30,000 runners. It's a huge event. And they gave me Coca-Cola when I was running the Comrades Marathon. And
oh, wow.
I thought I'm not sweating Coca-Cola, so I don't know why I'm getting Coca-Cola. And so it actually gave me the incentive to go and find out what's in sweat. And that's what I did. And I found that there was virtually no research work that had been done on what is the content of sweat, because I figured that that's what I should be replacing my sweat losses with. So I did that and found, as I say, I'll repeat, that there was very little work that had been done on it, and it was because it's very hard to collect. And so I created a device to collect the sweat, and then started collecting sweat. And at one stage had probably the biggest sweat collection in the world. And we analysed the sweat.
Ew.
And from that, we formulated Aqualyte. So that was the background to it, was running the Comrades Marathon and finding out that what they were giving me to drink really wasn't appropriate. So I went and found out what was in sweat and then formulated Aqualyte in accordance with the results of the sweat composition that we'd analysed. So Aqualyte is actually scientifically based, it's not market driven, it's academically based on research, original research.
Fascinating. So I don't even know, did you have to have like a biohazard area of all that sweat collection there?
No, it was basically what we wanted to find out was, is it the same concentration on the arms, the legs, the head, the torso? The answer is no. The concentration of sweat varies between body regions. And we got a fairly good idea of a cross-section of sweat. We did it in summer when the person is acclimatized, and we did it in winter on the same people who are deemed to be unacclimatized. And there was a massive difference, up to 100% in terms of concentration of sodium in sweat between climatized and unacclimatized people.
Yeah, okay. And I guess whilst we're talking about it, sweat seems to vary greatly between people as well. Some people just don't seem to sweat as much, and others profusely.
Absolutely. Yeah, the variation is quite incredible, really, between people into individual variation. It's quite there's a big variation.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about sweating and hydration. So first of all, what is dehydration?
Well, dehydration is when you actually get to the point where your blood volume is starting to go down as a consequence of your sweat. And some people actually have sweat rates that are incredible. For example, I was working as a doctor for the Indian cricket team, and one of the cricketers, his name is Rahul Dravid, he had a sweat rate of something like about 3.4 litres per hour. So he was a wicket keeper, and he was also the number 3 batsman. And basically, for him to keep up his hydration status was pretty much impossible. He's just sweats so much. The other person who had an incredible sweat rate was Pat Rafter, the tennis player, Australian tennis player. He had a sweat rate of about over 3 litres as well.
Amazing. So if we're working in the heat, in a hot cockpit, or the winter time, I know, at least in the wintertime, in the summertime, you're always feeling like, okay, I'm feeling a bit thirsty. So that's obviously the point where if you're feeling thirsty, you're actually already at a point of dehydration, aren't you?
You're perfectly correct, yes. When your thirst kicks in when you're about 2% down on your hydration status. So you don't get thirsty until you're well into hypohydration, going into dehydration.
Yeah, so it's not that much. It seems 2%. It's so little, but we're made up of so much water. I guess we need all of it, don't we?
Well, you do, but sweat all comes from the blood. So you're sweating, when it comes from the blood, it goes up a coil, the sweat in the sweat gland, and you reabsorb, or you reabsorb most of it, but what comes through the skin, and that's where the variation occurs. And you have to actively reabsorb that. So you use energy to reabsorb all of the other nutrients that go back into the blood. And that's where the variation occurs, is how efficient those ducts are at reabsorption.
Okay. So we could obviously dehydrate through activity, and we can do that in the winter time. And I guess that's part of the problem. Is I remember going ice skating where it's nice and cold, but you're still perspiring, but you don't notice it, and you don't realize, do you, that you've got to drink just as much, or maybe not quite as much, but you still need to be drinking in the wintertime as you do the summertime.
Yes, that's correct. And there's a lot of fallacies. Now, I came across quite a few people that thought that if they were doing swimming as an exercise, then they won't lose sweat. But you do. You do.
Yeah.
And it all depends on what the humidity is as well. With a very low humidity, which occurs in aeroplanes, you're going to be, losing a fair bit of sweat. Losing a fair bit of fluid from your body from breathing. So in terms of the atmosphere in the cockpit, you're looking at about 18 to 20% relative humidity. So You're breathing out 100% relative humidity. You're breathing 15 times a minute. And if you look at that on a 15, 16-hour flight, you're going to lose a couple of litres of fluid from breathing.
Fascinating. Yeah, right. I mean, I know that from just, doing instructing and standing in front of a classroom all day, just talking, you feel dry. You got to keep hydrating, keep drinking.
Correct, you do. And so, people are not aware that they're losing a lot of fluid. And then a lot of pilots also probably use caffeine as well, particularly on long-haul flights, and caffeine is a diuretic. So that's going to cause a net loss of fluid as well. The average person in summer is going to be losing in the order of about 300 to 500 mils an hour. So
yeah, that's a fair bit.
Yeah, if you're playing golf or walking around in 35 degrees or 33 degrees, you're going to be losing around about 300, 400 mils an hour. Miners working in very hot conditions underground, people think that if you go underground, it's going to get cooler, like a mine, a cave, but it's not. It's getting hotter. And you can lose. We've done a lot of research, or did a lot of research on miners, and they're losing between 600 and 700 mils an hour. So miners can turn over their body weight in sweat loss in a week and a bit. If you think about that, that's a phenomenal stat. They can turn over their body weight in a week and a bit. So between breathing 15 times a minute for 16 hours, 15 hours, and also drinking caffeine drinks like coffee, that's a diuretic. You're going to be losing a net amount of fluid, a considerable amount of fluid. And Australia's got the highest rate of kidney stones or renal calculi in the world. So that gives you some idea as to how many people are dehydrated and are not knowing it, and also particularly when they're unacclimatized to the heat.
All right. So how do we know if we are suitably hydrated? If we're not feeling thirsty, obviously.
Yeah.
But
so probably the urine color, the tonicity of the urine is probably the best indicator. So if it's quite dark, brownish, then you're probably dehydrated or at least hypohydrated. Hypo means less than ideal. So hypohydrated, you go from isohydration, which is normal, and then you go hypohydration, and then you go dehydration. So you get hypohydration, your urine will start changing color because your body is trying to reabsorb as much as it can.
All right. So is just drinking water enough?
Basically, water is the major component of what you're going to be losing in sweat. There is just before I forget, because you're up in Darwin and it's pretty hot up there, I'll give you a Bushman's test for dehydration. Mm-hmm. The Bushman's test for dehydration is you try and spit. And if your spit falls down your chin onto your clothes, you're dehydrated. So if you can't spit properly, it means that you're basically dehydrated. So it's a very easy test to do, and it's quite valid. So try spitting, and if you dribble, then you pretty much are dehydrated. So it's a pretty good indication of whether or not you're dehydrated. Coming back to the other question, is water enough? It is enough initially, but what you do lose is two minerals in sweat. One is sodium and the other one's potassium. Potassium, not so much, but sodium, or if you like salt, is the major component of sweat in terms of loss. That's pretty much all that you lose. A lot of people turn around and say, oh, do we lose magnesium, calcium, those sorts of electrolytes? No, we've done the research on that, and basically it's sodium and a little bit of potassium. That's what's in sweat, nothing else. You don't lose magnesium, you don't lose calcium or any other mineral.
Right, and not sugar. So, which is, I guess, what was in your drink that you were offered on your marathon there.
That's correct. I mean, there's a difference between when you're actively working in the heat, where you're sweating a lot, but even in an aeroplane, you're sweating. You know, you're not aware of it because it's been evaporated very quickly into the air because the air is so dry. So the atmosphere is perfectly happy to absorb all of the moisture coming off your skin. When you're in a place like Broome or Darwin or in the Queensland, some of the upper regions of Queensland, the humidity is very high and you're very conscious of sweating because you're wet and you know that the sweat is dribbling down and your clothes get a bit damp. And that's because the humidity is 80, 90%. So the atmosphere is not wanting to absorb the moisture that's coming off your skin. It doesn't want to absorb it into the atmosphere. So it drips off you. And if it's dripping off you, you're not losing heat. You lose heat by the evaporation of the sweat from the skin into the atmosphere. If the atmosphere won't accept it, then it's dripping off you and you're not losing the energy, or if you like, the heat. So your body temperature will start going up because you're not losing the heat.
Yeah, okay. So we're very good at researching pilot performance as far as effects of fatigue and alcohol and drugs and all that sort of thing. But can being dehydrated affect our mental function and performance?
Absolutely, it can. Cognitive decrements occur at around about 2 to 3% dehydration. So your decision making is impaired if you're even mildly dehydrated. Absolutely.
All right. And that can be whether I'm in a hot aeroplane up in the territory or just in a airliner with, not a 787, it's because, that's got slightly higher humidity. But in a typical airliner, you just long haul, dry, air conditioned air, even in an office, I guess.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. Now, if you go to a lot of places and you have got an air conditioner on, you'll listen to the air conditioner and you'll hear drip, drip, drip outside your air conditioner, outside your room. And what that's doing is taking the humidity from that room and dropping it down. That's why it's called evaporative air conditioning, because it's actually taking the air and depleting it of the moisture. So the relative humidity goes down. And that's why when you wake up, all of the miners that are working in mines particularly, and also pilots, are going to be having the effects of dehydration because of the humidity. You're talking about the 787 Dreamliner. I actually measured, as I have many of the other types of aeroplanes, the humidity, and it's about 21, 22%. So it's a little bit higher than the 18% that you'll get in something like a 747, but it's still not high. It's 22% is still fairly low for a humidity. So don't think that a Dreamliner is a hell of a lot more humid than what say a 747 is, or some of the older aeroplanes like DC-10s were notoriously known as being very, very dry.
So back to drinking water, I know you can actually, be quite thirsty, but you can actually overdo it, can't you? Because you can oversaturate your body with water, but this is where the electrolytes come in, is that right?
That's correct. Some people actually have died as a consequence of drinking too much water, because what you've got to do is maintain your sodium levels within a very tight, narrow value. So in your blood, that is. So if you're losing sodium in your sweat and you're replacing that with water, you're effectively diluting your blood concentration of sodium. It's a condition called hyponatremia, and it's very dangerous. And there's a lot of people that have succumbed to hyponatremia as a consequence of thinking that they're actually doing the right thing by drinking a lot of water. And there's been a few accidental deaths as a consequence of that.
Yeah, right. So we love these things called Yetis up here, which is our sort of thermo-cooled water bottles, and pretty much everyone in the territory has one. It's almost like a rite of passage. And so mine's 2 litres, So if I fill that twice and drink 4 litres of water, is that relying on me having salt intake through food?
Yes.
And then I'm okay? Or am I potentially, if I'm just, smash 2 litres of water in fairly quick succession, am I kind of putting myself into a bit of a risk category there?
Well, a young fellow like you that's got very good, healthy kidneys, you're probably not too bad. But as you get older, you get renal stenosis. In other words, the blood vessels supplying the kidney become atherosclerotic, and plaque gets formed around it, just like they do in the heart vessels. And so your filtration level goes down. So it's called a GFR, glomerular filtration rate. It goes down, and so you don't regulate your sodium levels as best you should as you get older. So a lot of older people are very prone to having electrolyte imbalance as a consequence of that. So in answer to your question, 2 litres, that's okay. Your kidneys will manage that. But if you kept on doing that, and 4 litres, that would probably, in my opinion, be too much. You should replace some of that with electrolytes. And what you're doing is, usually, if you eat on a regular basis, breakfast, lunch, tea, possibly a snack, then you usually are going to top up those sodium levels and potassium levels, but particularly sodium. But if you're drinking a lot of water and not eating sufficient foods which are high in salt or got salt in them, then, you're possibly getting your sodium levels in your blood will start going down.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm drinking that over a period of a couple of hours, so I guess that's, that also plays a role.
But yes, it does, because you're giving your kidneys time to regulate your sodium levels.
Yeah. All right. So as far as if we're just sticking to water, room temperature or cold water? I hear cold water tends to collapse the capillaries and that, is that right? So the absorption into the bloodstream is not as good? Or is that a bit of a fallacy?
No, I think that if it's, you don't want to have it freezing cold, but cool is good, because it's going to use some of the body heat in order to get it up to body temperature, which is 37 degrees. So if you drink a fluid of, say, 5 degrees, which would be from the fridge, then your body is going to use some of the heat when it hits into the stomach and then goes into the intestine to heat it up to 37 degrees. So I would go for cool drinks rather than warm ones or room temperature drinks.
And about 3 to 4 litres a day is still the recommended sort of daily intake for an average activity?
Yeah, without much activity, and depending on what the temperature is outside. I mean, once the temperature gets up to close to body temperature, 37 degrees, you're really going to struggle. You start getting up to 33, 34, not too bad. You can dissipate heat. But when you get up to the equivalent of 37 degrees, it's very taxing on the body to get rid of that heat.
And alkaline water, it's a bit better for that absorption and rehydration?
Well, water is mainly alkaline, slightly alkalinic. It's shouldn't be acidic. pH of 7, 8, possibly 9.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know there's some water we have which is meant to just maintain an alkaline level, that it just seems to be more rehydrating and thirst quenching than just sort of normal water. But that could also be with the additives and tap water and that sort of thing as well.
Yes, correct. Yep. So filtrated water, or if you like, water purifiers, if you like, they take out a lot of the other minerals that make water harder, shall we use as a phrase?
Yeah.
So, yes.
You mentioned the renal failure, the kidney stones and things, or the kidney failure in Australia. that seems to be a bit of an issue with the number of coffees a typical pilot might try and actually take on. What about alcohol as far as alcohol consumption? Is beer this is going to upset all the territory pilots potentially, but is beer containing electrolytes, and is it a form of hydration to a point?
Well, again, alcohol is a diuretic, as is coffee, as is some of these energy drinks. They're not energy drinks. They're called energy drinks, but what they are is high caffeinated drinks, and they're all diuretics. And so you're losing, if you drink beer, if you drink a litre of beer, you're going to lose about 1,200 mils of urine. So it's going to cost you. So alcohol, yes, it is a diuretic, and it will cause you a net loss of fluid.
Yeah. Okay. So really, there is no, I guess, replacement for a good old drink of water, and apart from maybe adding some electrolytes.
That's correct. And it's one of the criticisms I've got of most of the airlines, that the airlines, they will give you alcohol, so beer and whiskey, gin and tonic, or whatever it is that you want. But they also give you soft drinks, but the soft drinks are usually, even tonic water is 10% sugar. And, Coca-Cola, that again has got a tonicity of about 500. It's very hyper tonicity. So there's nothing that airlines give you that is really suitable for, one, your health, and two, for your hydration.
Yeah, okay.
So
that's what it comes down to.
Water, alcohol, and high sugar drinks. Basically, that's what they give you.
Yeah, which leads to you feeling a little bit sort of seedy and crappy after, even a 3 or 4 hour flight, let alone a long haul.
Yeah, jet lag. You get jet lag is going to be enhanced by that. And yeah, I don't really understand why they don't give you something that is going to, a bit like Aqualyte, which is going to be giving you a little bit of glucose, but not too much. And it's going to give you electrolytes to maintain your electrolyte balance. And it's going to give you, more importantly, fluid, which is going to maintain your hydration status particularly in a long flight. But even a short flight, we have thousands of miners going to work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and they have to get up at 3:30 in the morning. They go out to the airport, they get onto an aeroplane, and they do 2 hours, 3 hours of flying, which is going to cause a bit of dehydration. They probably have, not had a decent breakfast at 4 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So they're going to get to work and then change clothes and go to work and spend the rest of the day at work. And you usually almost guarantee that about 60% of them are going to be hypohydrated or dehydrated.
Amazing
shift.
So I think a lot of people live their life like that, don't they? Sort of feeling a bit crap, and all it could be is just drinking a bit more water or getting those electrolytes in you could just change. You just get used to feeling that way, don't you?
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So what does Aqualyte do precisely, and how should it be used on a either a daily basis or for pilots, which is obviously the main audience that's listening right now, to supplement their daily operations and things?
Yeah, okay. So the pilots have food delivered into the cockpit, as you know, and so they...
Well, not all of them.
Not all of them. Not all of them.
I haven't found my call button yet.
No, okay. Yeah, touche. But I would never advocate to drink Aqualyte all the time. You would say two water, one Aqualyte. 2 water, 1 Aqualyte. So if you're having whatever it is, if you're having a glass of water, have 2 glasses of water, 1 of Aqualyte, not just Aqualyte. It does.
And that's part of the thing with sports drinks, isn't it? Where people are just
sports drinks, isotonic,
drinking that all the time.
They've got a lot more. Aqualyte's only got 3.4% of carbohydrate in it. Powerade, Gatorade, all of those sorts of drinks are a lot higher in sugar than something like Aqualyte. They're isotonic. In other words, they're the same as the blood, which is quite high. And also it takes a long time to absorb them because it's going into the body, which is Aqualyte is very low tonicity. It's half the body composition or concentration of electrolytes in the body. It's got half the concentration. So osmosis is very, very fast and rapid. So you drink it and it's in your bloodstream within about 10, 15 minutes.
Amazing. All right. And I think, yeah, that's important. It's not a lolly water thing. It is it's not a medically prescribed thing, but it is a supplement to your drinking behaviors sort of thing. It's not there to be had all the time. Otherwise, anything good can be abused, can't it? So,
yeah, that's correct. And a lot of people are very conscious of salt intake. You know, it's one of the health messages that you get. The belief is that if you take too much salt, it's going to increase your blood pressure and you'll get hypertension. But if you're sweating and if you're losing fluid, then I think that you should be taking it. I certainly don't get into a cockpit without it.
All right. So if people are interested in Aqualyte, where can they go to check it out and get some for themselves?
They can. We're basically in WA. We've got a lot of the pharmacies have it. IGA stores have it. Not so much in the eastern states, but you can order it through the internet, which is aqualyte.com.au. Aqualyte being AQUA, aqua for water, and then light is LYTE for electrolytes. So it's water with electrolytes, basically. Some people try and spell it LITE. So that's not going to get there. So aqualyte.com.au.
All right. Yeah, well, I'll put the link in the description. And is there like a little sample pack or something they can order or?
Yep. So we have a sample pack, and then we have small cartons, medium cartons, and large cartons. So yeah, a lot of people order the sample pack and try it out. And there's 3 different flavors, and there's 3 different sachet sizes. One, there's a little one that makes up 600 mils, like a water bottle. You've just put it into your water bottle, and you've got a electrolyte drink. And then most of the mining companies buy the 2-litre sachets because most people walk around with a 2-litre bottle, and as part of their PPE, their personal protection equipment, includes a water bottle, just like you were mentioning before. So that makes up 2 litres, and then we've got the 800 gram, which makes up 20 litres, and that comes with a little scoop, and you can put a measured amount in it, and would be by far the most economical way of using Aqualyte.
Yeah, that's huge. No, that's amazing, mate. Look, I think it's a great product. I use it myself, and as we were talking, it's used very widely amongst many sports teams we all know and love, but we just can't say who for other reasons. But it really is a fantastic product, and I want to support it, and really appreciate you coming on today and telling everyone about it.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate your support, and let's just hope that we can hydrate some of the pilots a bit better than what they currently are, particularly the long-haul pilots, or the ones that go home and have a few beers and then go into air conditioning and get up in the morning and fly again. You should start your day with some fluids.
Fantastic. All right, Graham, thank you again, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trent.
Huge thanks to Dr. Graham Bates there, founder from Aqualyte, and a really great product. I do recommend you check it out. And for our listeners, there is a special deal. So jump on to the Aqualyte website. The link is in the episode description below, and you can put in the code FTOZ, so FT space AUS. and you will get yourself a nice little discount that's valid for the next 6 months. And I strongly recommend checking it out. Staying hydrated whilst flying is so important, be it in the hot territory weather, WA, New South, everywhere gets hot in Queensland, or just doing long haul if you're an airline pilot and stuck in that dry, pressurized air all the time. It can just make a wealth of difference into your well-being and just your mental state. So go check that out, Aqualyte website. All the details are in the episode description below. If you have any troubles at all, just let me know and I'll sort you out. You can, of course, do that by hitting me up on info@trentrobinsonaviation.com.au or on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. All right, awesome episode next week. Another great interview. Until then, blue skies, and remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.